Hello everyone, and welcome to the August 2019 update of the Power BI desktop. As always, we have lots of exciting features to cover this month, and we'll start with the reporting features. First up is a feature that we announced at the Microsoft Business Application Summit that got a lot of people excited, being able to group the visuals on your report page. Now, if you did watch the demo that Will did at MBAS, you might remember that there were several different versions of grouping where the group itself and the objects inside the group interacted in different ways. With this release, we're only introducing one type of grouping, which is where the visuals inside the group and the group itself, they scale together. It basically, if you've used grouping in PowerPoint, it basically works just like that. Jumping over to my report, if, say, I wanted to group this text box and this KPI visual, I could just select them both through control clicking, right click, and select group. And now they are treated like one object. You'll see there's a frame around both of them. And if I click and drag, it just moves them both together as one object. And if I open up the selection pane, you'll actually be able to see that this group 6 is the group I just added. You'll see that there are several other groups. I've already pre-grouped all the other KPIs and text boxes. I can double click in the selection frame and rename the groups. I can also show and hide everything within a group all at once. So if I click on the hide this visual button, you'll see that both the text box and the KPI visual disappeared. But I can choose to still, if I expand the group, just hide one of them if I want. And when you hide and show again, it does remember the state it was in. So in this case, the KPI is hidden, but the label is visible. Hide both. And then whenever I re-show it, it still remembers to hide the KPI card. And all of this is bookmarkable, just like the normal visual level hide and show, and so that will make it a lot easier for you to hide and show a whole group of stuff all at once instead of having to click all the eyeballs and then bookmark it. You have to be a lot more careful that way, so this should save you some time with that. You can also select multiple things and group them all together to create a nested group. So now you see I have another group that has all of these groups in them. You can also select two individual groups and choose to merge them into one group. So now you'll see that Germany has both the UK and the Germany related KPIs and text boxes because I merged them. That's actually a feature that we've added on top of PowerPoint. PowerPoint only allows you to nest groups together. If you wanted to merge them, you'd have to ungroup both of them and then group them all. So this should save a few clicks on top of what you might be used to for PowerPoint. The interactions on the group are the same as PowerPoint as well. So whenever you go to click something that's inside a group, the first click will select the group itself, and then the second click will move down, and so now you'll see I'm specifically selecting the Australian group, and then again click again, and now I'm actually clicking the individual object, in this case the KPI for the that's filtered down to Australia, and I can of course then go in and I can format that individual visual. If I group two things together and then go to resize them, they of course resize together just like they do in PowerPoint, but I can of course again still resize an individual visual once I select just that one. Another thing that makes it very similar to PowerPoint is that this space behind, the empty space within the group between these two visuals, it's not actually, it's transparent obviously, and whenever I click in that space, it does not actually select the group as a whole because it doesn't really have any kind of substance to it. And you'll see I can actually still interact with the visual that's behind it and say cross highlight on that individual point. However, we have extended grouping to allow you to actually format that background. So the background's off by default, so it's transparent, but I can turn it on and actually give the group itself a little bit of substance. So let's say I make the background actually the first data color of our default theme. And now, because it actually has a color, it has some kind of substance to it, if I go ahead and click on that section, it selects the group since, it has form. By giving groups backgrounds, you could potentially group a bunch of stuff together and then give them, make it seem like a side pane or top navigation by just filling in the background instead of having to add a shape to color specific sections of your report. We think this grouping feature is really going to improve the usability of the product whenever you have a report page that has a bunch of stuff on it. You need to be able to move things around, group things together. It should just make you much more efficient when authoring really complex reports that have a lot of layers to them. Next on our list is a migration story for the new filter pane that we made generally available last month. Obviously, since it's generally available, it is the default for any new reports, but we did not force you to yet migrate over to the new filter pane for all of your existing reports. We know a lot of people want to be able to easily migrate over to the new pane, so what we've done is whenever you open up the Power BI desktop, you will get a dialog that pops up, and it will ask you, would you like to update all of your existing reports on open to the new filter pane? And this option will be checked by default. And if you hit OK, what will happen is every time you open up a new report, it will have the new filter pane automatically there. You can go and, adjust how it looks. It will have the same filters that it already has in the old filter pane. Nothing changes. But you could choose to hide things, lock things, collapse the pane, all of the great features we've added to the new filter pane you'll be able to use now. And then if you save that report and publish it, then the new filter pane will be available to your end users. So when you hit OK in this dialog, it's not going to go to the Power BI service and just automatically update all of your reports there with the new filter pane. You will still have to save the file once you've opened it and publish to expose the new filter pane to them, but this should save you the effort of having to go back to the options dialog for every single report and turn on the new filter pane individually that way. Now, if you uncheck the box on this pop-up dialog, you'll still continue to have the old filter pane on for all of your reports that you haven't migrated yet, and you can still individually go one by one to that options dialog to migrate. However, we do suggest that you take advantage of this time to migrate your filter panes. If you haven't played with the new filter pane yet, take this time to learn about it, see how it works, format it to match your report, learn about all the new features, because there will be a point in time where we will force you to upgrade to the new filter pane, so you might as well take advantage of it now whenever it's on your own terms. The third reporting feature is an update to the icons conditional formatting feature we shipped last month. So if you remember, last month we shipped the ability to add icons next to the values in your table and matrix cells based off of any kind of business logic you may have or a field in your model. This month, we've added an icon style picker as well, which if you've used the icon conditional formatting in Excel, you're already familiar with. If I go into the conditional formatting card for this matrix that I have selected and open up the icons dialog, you'll see there's this new drop down called style in the dialog. And what this does is it surfaces up a bunch of new icon styles that you can take advantage of. And when you click on any of them, we'll generate all the rules that would be needed for these icons to show. And of course, you can still go and customize any of the rules, type in other things inside any of the boxes, customize an individual icon within the set. And when you do that, you'll notice the style updates to custom. And then of course you can go and click on a different one to go and then try out that other style. And what's nice about this is that it just gives you a great starting off point. If you really wanted to be able to use, say, the little squares that fill in the grid, before you would have had to go and manually add each individual rule and then select those icons. That's kind of a pain. So with this, you can immediately jump to that as a starting point, and then if you just need to customize one, it's a lot quicker and easier now. We've also updated our conditional formatting across all the different ways you can conditionally format in the table and matrix, titles, background colors, all of it. We now have updated it so that we actually expose warnings to you whenever you might have errors within the logic of your conditional formatting. So, for example, let's say that I wanted to conditionally format the title of this chart. If I go into the title card and go into font color, and let's say I wanted to conditionally format it, but then I picked under field value a field that doesn't actually have colors. So let's just take my icon set measure, which, returns, if you remember from last month, icons to show in the table and matrix, and I hit OK. This isn't a color, so obviously the color of the title wouldn't be showing. But since you have logic that's trying to be applied that just doesn't make sense, you'll also now have this warning available. And with the warning message, we tell you, hey, we don't recognize the color that we're trying to apply right now. And if you click on it, we actually give you more information, like what section of the formatting pane have you actually applied this rule from, what's the field that's being used, what value are we not recognizing, and then also telling you that you need to fix it by actually applying something that has a hex code. So this is going to be really useful for, you probably aren't going to do what I just did here, which is pretty silly, trying to apply a URL as a color, but you may have, say, a typo, like maybe you forgot to include the pound sign for the hex codes, or maybe you misspelled red as rad, or something else, some small little typo, and you might not notice it right away. But with this, you'll be able to see that error right away and be able to get it fixed. And you'll also notice in the formatting pane as well, we show a little warning icon to let you know, hey, there is some kind of issue right here. It helps you target down what specific field is having some kind of issue. This warning showing right next to the property that's having the issues is actually going to be really nice once everything in the formatting pane is conditionally formattable and you are, say, taking advantage of that and you have a lot of conditional formatting rules applying across your entire pane. This is really going to help you pinpoint exactly where your problems are. One last thing to note about the conditional formatting warnings, this is more for you as the report author. They don't show for the end users who are looking at your report. So if you publish it and it still has a warning in it, they won't see that warning. Under analytics this month, we have 2 updates for our key influencers visual. The first is that we now support measures in the analyze part of the key influencers visual. And also this month, we are very happy to announce that the visual is now generally available, so you no longer have to turn on a preview switch to use it. Switching over to my report, I'm going to talk a little bit about the measures support. In the Analyze bucket, we've supported both numeric columns and also categorical fields to determine what influences those values. But now you can additionally also drag in measures. So if I want to take my average sales measure, I can drag that into the Analyze bucket and have it tell me what influences that as well. An interesting thing about measures for the key influences visual is that obviously to analyze it, we're going to have to evaluate that measure. And typically we always evaluate the measure based off of what other fields are in that visual. So if you just drag a measure into this visual, we're going to evaluate it based off of the fields that you have in this explain by bucket. So everything in here will be used to evaluate, in my case, average sales. What that means is that as you drag more in different fields and add and remove things from here, the evaluation of average sales is going to change, and therefore the results you're going to get in the key influences visual is also going to change. So things could appear or disappear depending based off of what's in this explain by bucket. If instead you have another field you want to be used to evaluate the average sales or whatever measure you're using, you can add that to this new bucket we added, which is expand by. So you're typically going to want to have, say, like an ID field or some other field that is going to be mostly unique for your data to expand by to have the most consistent results. So if I, for example, put in my product ID field here, what I'm getting is the visual is going to explain to me what influences my average sales evaluated by each individual product, and I want it to be explained by these things. And so now, since I'm evaluating the measure based off product ID, no matter what fields I put in here, it's not going to change the evaluation of average sales. So I'm going to get much more consistent results for my visual.
Moving on to our visualization section, we have 4 great custom visuals releasing this month, and all 4 are part of the XViz Enterprise Suite. Let's take a look at the first chart on our list, which is the MultiAccess chart. In the example we're looking at oil versus coal consumption in the UK. You'll notice off the bat that there are 2 y-axis. One is looking at megatone, which is the absolute value, and then the other is looking at the percent of consumption. So let's take a look at how to set up this chart. So to create this chart, first we'll need to add our axis, which is year, and then we can start dragging in the values that we want to measure. So let's start with the absolutes. So here's coal, and then we'll also get the absolute for oil. Now we can go ahead and format these. So go to the format pane, and you'll see there's the y-axis 1. We can make sure you want to turn off auto scaling so that those values can line up. So let's make sure that everything is set to end at 105. So let's set the end at 105 there. Now we can also turn off that axis because we only need one y-axis. Let's add a title so that it's the correct unit of measure. Now let's go add our percent values for both coal and oil. So let's find percent coal and add it to axis 3, and then percent oil and add it to axis 4. Now we do need to update these so that they reflect line charts versus column. So let's take series type, and you'll see that the default for all is column, but we have quite a bit of options here, such as column stacked, line, area stacked, etc. So let's select line. Now we also need to modify the scaling like we did for the others. So let's turn off auto scaling, and then let's set it to end at 100. And let's do the same for the other series. Alright, and there you have it. We've created our chart. Now let's go ahead and hide the third axis there. And let's give this a title. So here we can just add percent. Now let's take a look at how we can conditionally format this chart. So what you'll need to do is select the pencil icon in the right-hand corner, and this is how you can enter the conditional formatting settings. So let's say we want to conditionally format the 2019 rainfall. So what we're going to do is add a rule for there. So click plus. So first we'll select our color. Let's pick a blue color here, and then click save. Then we want to give this a title because it's going to appear in the legend. So let's title it rainfall in 2019 that's greater than 2018. You can choose how you want to format it based on a rule or color scale. So let's select rule. And then you can define your conditions here. So let's define a condition as rainfall in 2019 greater than the comparison type, which will be value, than 2018. So you can save it as it is now, or you can add additional logic with the plus button. So let's go ahead and save this. You'll see now that the visual is updated, and that value now appears as a value in the legend. And you can go ahead and click back to report to return to the visual. Moving on to our next custom visual, we have the Marimekko chart, which allows you to visualize categorical data that's over 2% scale variables. So let's take a look at the report to see an example. So here in this example, we're measuring total revenue and looking at it across from region and also state. So you'll see the region at the bottom, we're north, east, south, and central. And at the top, we break it down by state. And you'll see what percentage of revenue that each of the states contributes to that region's revenue. So now let's see how we would go and create this visual. First, we'll start by adding a category. In our case, that would be region. Then we'll need to add a height value. So let's use total revenue as the measure for the height value. These are the two required fields to at least create the visual. Now let's go and see what formatting options we have. Let's modify the x-axis. Let's make sure we include a title, and then we can also customize the labels. So let's go ahead and change the size. And we can also change the axis color if we want to. Now, going back to the visual, let's go ahead and add state as a legend. So now we're not only breaking it down by region, but also by the states in that region. Let's see other formatting options that we have. So if you go to series type, you'll see that there's two chart type options. There's stacked, and there's also percent stacked. Now, another cool thing about this chart is that you can also add custom tooltips to them. So if you have a report page tooltip in your report, you can connect it to the tooltip here. So go ahead and select tooltip, which was the report page. And now when you hover over the data points, you can see the tooltip that I created earlier. Now let's check out some conditional formatting options. So let's say we want to add conditional formatting for total revenue. Let's say I want to be able to easily tell when my revenue is under $1 million. So let's add a comparison of less than and 1 million. And go ahead and click save. So this makes it a little bit easier for me to see which states are on the lower end of the revenue. Next on our list is the variance chart, and this is a really good custom visual if you're trying to measure the absolute variance or the percent variance between two values. Let's take a look at the sample report. In this example, I'm looking at the variance between this year's sales and last year's sales across a category. Now let's take a look at how we can create this chart. Creating this chart is quite easy. We only actually need 3 inputs, one for category, this year's sales, and last year's sales. So to get started, we'll go to the category section and we'll drop in our category fields. And then for this year's sales will be our actual value, and last year's sale would be our comparison value. And it's as simple as that. You'll see that we have the absolute variance on the left, and then on the right is our percent variance. Finally, let's add some conditional formatting. So let's conditionally format this year's sales. Let's add an accent color of green. And let's add it to this year's sales where it was greater than last year's sale. So select value and compare value to last year. And then we can go ahead and click save. And now you'll see it's even more evident which categories had growth in sales. Now for the last custom visual on our list this month, we have the horizon chart, which is kind of an alternative between the ridgeline plot and the small multiple area charts. So let's take a look at the sample report to see how to create this chart. In this example, we want to show the number of people accessing our site over time by certain regions. So to create this, what we're going to need to do is first drag in a time field. So select time, and we need to update it so that it's not the date hierarchy. And then we'll also need a category. So in our case, it will be region. And then finally a value to measure. So that's number of people accessing the site. Now moving on to our next section for connectivity. First on our list is support for SAP HANA HDI containers. Views within HDI containers are now shown within the Navigator dialog when using SAP HANA Connector. This allows you to consume them either within import or direct query mode. Second, on our data connectivity section, we have a feature that's in preview, which is the edit SAP HANA and SAP BW variables in Power BI service. So previously, only the desktop author was able to edit these variables, but now with the new filter pane, we've exposed these to your end users. Let me walk you through how to set this up. In this sample, I'm connected to an SAP HANA data source, and I also have the new filter pane enabled on the right. Now let's get started. So click File, Options and Settings, Options. Under Global, you'll see that there's a direct query option. You want to make sure that the relational source is not enabled. And then under direct query for current file, you want to make sure that the preview toggle is selected. And then go ahead and click OK. Now let me show you the author experience. So click Edit Queries, and then Edit Variables. This is an example of what the author experience might look like. So let's go and tweak some values. So if I commit these changes, this is what my end users will see by default. So I'm going to go ahead and publish with no filtering of the data. And one important thing to note is that right now we only support SAP variables for premium workspaces. A couple other requirements worth mentioning is that you need to have a gateway that is SSO enabled, and also it'll take about 5 minutes before you see the edit variables link in the service. So that only happens on the first time that you publish. So let's go ahead and see our report in the service. You'll see there's this new edit variables link in the filter pane. I'll click on that. So as an end user, I now see this new dialog where I can customize what I want to see for my report. So let's go ahead and change some of these values. And I'll click OK. And then I'll go ahead and click Apply. So now I was able to edit the SAP variables and it reflected in my report. I can also click Reset to Default to go back to the original values. Make sure you read the documentation linked in the blog for more details. We have another connector enhancement this month, which is for the PostgreSQL connector, which now allows you to support the direct query connectivity mode so that you can build reports on top of your PostgreSQL databases without needing to import the data. This month, we're also announcing that the MarkLogic connector is now generally available. You can find this connector within the database category of the Get Data dialog. And the last update this month is that we've added a new Power Platform category within the Get Data dialog. In this category, you'll find connectors for Power BI datasets, Common Data Service, and Power BI data flows. Stay tuned as we continue to make more investments in connectors across the Power Platform. So thank you so much for watching this month's video. As always, let us know what you think and which features were your favorite.